Hi everyone, this video is titled Jesus Christ, the Firstborn of all creation, and this is a reference to Colossians 1:15. One of the reasons why I'm making this video is because Jehovah's Witnesses love to quote Colossians 1:15 and use it as a proof text to show that Jesus Christ is the first one created by Jehovah God. And the second reason why I'm making this video is because I've noticed that many Christians have had a hard time explaining Colossians 1:15 to their Jehovah's Witness friends. Now, in case you don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus Christ is Michael the Archangel. And Michael the Archangel is the first thing and only thing directly created by Jehovah God. And through Michael the Archangel, Jehovah God created all other things. And one of the verses they use is Colossians 1:15, which I'm going to read out of my New World Translation. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Verse 16, because by means of him all other things were created in the heavens and upon the earth, the things visible and the things invisible, no matter whether they are thrones or lordships or governments or authorities. All other things have been created through him and for him. Also, he is before all other things, and by means of him, all other things were made to exist. Now, the first thing that we have to keep in mind is that we have to take every verse in its proper context, okay? And we can't put words in the text that aren't there, like other. We have to remember the author's original intended meaning. Now, the word firstborn here does not mean first created. Firstborn here in Greek is prototokos, and that word is spelled Prototokos. And that word means first in rank, preeminent one, heir, or supreme. Okay? Now there is another word for first created in Greek, and that's prototesis, and that's Protoktis, and that word means first created. So, first point, firstborn does not mean first created. It means preeminent one, first in rank, heir, or supreme overall. Okay? And the first question that I would like to ask my Jehovah's Witness friends is, if Paul intended to communicate that Jesus Christ was the first one created by Jehovah God, why didn't he use the term first created? Now, if you're a Christian watching this, I think it's very important to remain patient with your Jehovah's Witness friends. What I'm sharing with you today, I've also shared with my Jehovah's Witness friends in person a couple days ago. And I've had to rephrase the questions a couple different ways and a couple times, okay? So again, if the Apostle Paul intended to communicate that Jesus Christ was the first one created, why didn't he use that term? And an example of firstborn meaning preeminent one, heir, supreme, is in Psalm 89:27, where King David, who we know was actually the last son born of Jesse, called the firstborn. So, what do you think Scripture means when it calls David, who was the last son born of Jesse, the firstborn? That's the second question. What do you think Scripture means when it calls David the firstborn, and we know that he was actually the last son born? And I asked this question over the internet to a Jehovah's Witness, and he replied back, Psalm 89:27 doesn't contradict what I'm saying. And then he replied back again, that doesn't disprove what I'm saying. But I never said it contradicted what you're saying or it disproved. I am simply asking you, what do you think it means when Scripture calls David the firstborn? And a second example of this is with Joseph. Joseph had two sons in Genesis 40 verses 50 through 51, Ephraim and Manasseh. And Manasseh was the first one born, but in Jeremiah 31:9, Ephraim is called the firstborn. And so it's going to be the same question. What do you think Scripture means when it calls Ephraim the firstborn, when we know that he was actually born sometime later than Manasseh? So, those are the three questions. Now, another point that I want to make is that what the Watchtower teaches, and I've also gotten this argument from a Jehovah's Witness online, they say that Jesus Christ is the firstborn of Jehovah, just like Eliab is the firstborn of Jesse, okay? So when the Jehovah's Witness looks at this verse, he sees, look, Jesus is the first created by Jehovah. So Jesus is the firstborn of Jehovah, just like Eliab is the firstborn of Jesse. But Scripture never calls Jesus the firstborn of Jehovah. Colossians 1:15 says he is the firstborn of all creation. So using Watchtower reasoning here, and I pointed this out to the Jehovah's Witnesses, you would have to say that creation procreated Jesus. Because if Eliab is the firstborn of Jesse, Jesse had to procreate Eliab, right? Well, and if Jesus is the firstborn of Jehovah, Jehovah would have to create Jesus. But remember, Colossians 1:15 says Jesus is the firstborn of all creation. So using Watchtower reasoning, wouldn't you have to say that creation procreated Jesus? Now, this is the opposite of what happened, because in verse 16 it says that by means of him all things were created, in the heavens, upon the earth, the things visible, the things invisible, no matter whether they are thrones, lordships, governments, authorities, all things have been created through him and for him, and he is before all things. Now, knowing what we know now, and after you go through this patiently with the Jehovah's Witnesses, go to Colossians 1:15 again and look at the verse in light of what we know. That firstborn means preeminent one, heir, or supreme. Firstborn has been applied to those who weren't the firstborn, and we need to take the verse in its proper context. He is the image of the invisible God, preeminent over all creation, or of all creation, supreme over all creation, heir over all creation. Why? Because he made everything. Because he's equal to the Father. And if he's equal to the Father, then he's God. So, prayerfully read through Colossians 1:15, turn from your sin, trust in the true Jesus of the Bible, who is the creator, who is the preeminent one over everything, and who we will bow our knees to one day. Okay? If I didn't explain everything well enough, I apologize. You can message me or comment me. Alright? Turn to Jesus and follow him.